All righty. It's good to see everyone this morning. Before we start, I would like to do a check-in to see where we're all coming from. At school, we use a device called the mood meter. I'll share it with you and explain it. Can you guys see that? The mood meter? Awesome.
Yes.
So on the left side, we have this energy. So if you're low in energy, you're down below. If you're high in energy, you go up. And on the bottom, we have pleasantness. If you are low in pleasantness, you'll be to the left. If you're high in pleasantness, you'll be to right. And so if you look at this mood meter and you're high in energy and high in pleasantness, you'll be over here in the yellow. If you're low in energy and low in pleasantness, you'll be over here in the blue. If you're high in energy, but low in pleasantness, that's the red. If you're high in pleasantness, but kind of low in energy, you're over here in the green. So take a look at some of these adjectives that describe a mood and pick one and that you're feeling at the moment and put it in the chat. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I love it. It's good. It kind of gives me a sense of where people are coming from in the room. And a lot of time, did I do a stop share? There we go. Oh my goodness. Hold on, my computer's freaking out on me. Okay. A lot of times when people say, how are you doing? What's the first thing we say? Fine. And so that just gave us a little bit more articulation to how we are coming into this space. So thank you for sharing. I'd like to begin with a prayer and to help us find grounding. So if you could pray with me. God, as we sit here in your presence, as we breathe you in into our lungs, may we notice you, may we sense you, and may we be moved by you. God, as we're in this space on Zoom, and as we all come with all our many moods all over the meter, may we slow down and pause and notice that even now you're here with us. And may we notice you, may we experience you, may we be changed by you. And my hope and prayer this morning is that even in this weird Zoom space, we can still notice and experience the divine. Amen. So this morning, I'd like to share part of my journey and processing and learning that has been going on in my life. This isn't a sermon, but more of a letting you see what I've been thinking and letting you all interact and engage with me in this teaching. To give you a little background about me, besides being here on staff at Haven, my other job is an educator, as most of you know. I have been an educator as long as I've been a minister. In fact, in many ways, it just all overlaps, meaning at a young age, I got to teach kids in church. And when I got back from college, I started working with the youth in church, and I also started working at a private school teaching. So it's what I've always done, taught and did ministry together. Right now, I'm on staff here at Haven, and I work at a private school, Prospect Sierra, with 7th grade math. And so it's something that's just kind of innately in me to teach and to do ministry. I say both teaching and ministry go hand in hand for me because I have two sayings. One, I believe everything is spiritual, and two, every moment is teachable. Now, I kind of annoyed Gwen this morning when I tried to convince her that every moment is teachable because she didn't want to learn anything, but that's okay. I truly believe that every moment is teachable. So my first instinct when I speak is to teach and not to preach. You may ask, what's the difference? And I think the biggest difference is this back and forth interaction that you get when you teach. To be honest, teaching on Zoom has had its challenges. Um, when I teach at school, there's just not on Zoom, there's just not a lot of back and forth from the students, and it's hard. But we've been in person now since January on and off, and it's a huge difference. I could put a concept on the board and there's just dialogue galore back and forth. And I love that about teaching. But I know right now we're here in a Zoom space. And so I don't expect a lot of people to feel that comfortable to engage in teaching. So what I've decided to do is to use the chat. And I ask you to stretch yourself and be able to use the chat with me. And I gave you an exercise earlier with the mood meter. And I think I have 2 other questions as we move throughout this teaching this morning for you to engage in the chat. And I'd like you to use the chat as freely as you want to. It's in this Zoom space, it's our way to connect with each other. And it's the way to just share where we are and be held by each other. So please use the chat. I have a question for you so we could practice using that chat. In 1 or 2 words or a short phrase, why are you here this morning? If you could put that in the chat. Why are you here this morning? Thanks, Brett and Mari. Love it. Awesome. Dina's here. Yes. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing and participating. That's so helpful for me. Last week was Easter Sunday. And as I spent last week reading the resurrection story and the different gospel narratives, something stood out to me about Mary and the other women at the tomb. This question kept popping up in my head. Why were they there? Why did they go? Well, sure, they probably went because they were grieving and mourning and they wanted to take care of Jesus's body. But they didn't have to. They didn't have to go. It didn't have to be included in this story. Why were they there? And that question just kind of reverberated with me all week. Why were they there? Did they hope to find an empty tomb? Did they hope to see that miracle that Jesus would raise from the dead? I don't think so. It didn't seem like it from their reaction, because they were surprised even. Would I have gone if I were them? And then I started thinking about, why am I here? I asked you all, why are you here this morning? And thank you for sharing your answers. But all this week, this question has sat deep within me. Why am I here? I wrestle with this question about Haven. Why am I here at Haven? It was 2 years ago, this May, that Dawn and I first stepped into visiting Haven. And it was a year ago, last January, that I officially came on staff. And when I came on staff, I was coming on staff into a church where life was kind of normal, where there was church every Sunday or 2 Sundays a month, and there was a band and we set up, and there was bagels and coffee, and there was kids, and there was youth, and there was a teaching, and there was worship, and we'd go out to lunch, and there was this rhythm of I don't know if we call it normal, this rhythm of the way we used to do church. And then the pandemic happened, and there was this uncharted territory of unknown of what church can look like, what church can be. And to be honest, it's been so challenging to create and do church in this space. And there are many times I felt at the end of my abilities and creativity and energy. And amidst all of this, I've also been doing this place of soul searching. I've been what I've been calling deconstruction, and of late, liberation journey, trying to make sense of my faith, my racial identity, in my place and voice in Haven. To say the least, it's been a journey and it's been tough. And to be honest, there are days when I ask the question, why am I here? And I can't come up with a great answer. Nothing seems to make sense or fall in place. And I question whether it means it's time to walk away from the church, not just church Haven, but church religion. And it may come to that someday. But this week, as I sat with that question, there were a couple things that came up as I looked for answer, a couple things that made me start rethinking things. You see, I've spent 2020 in deconstruction or liberation and sifting through my faith journey and trying to find meaning and answers, really trying to find answers. And I signed up for seminars. I signed up for e-courses. I signed up for cohorts. I was reading books. I even got a spiritual director and a therapist, and just trying to find answers as I connect with people and just in this searching and searching and searching and searching, want these answers. But I've realized this week in my deconstruction, I've been looking for answers. This might sound dumb for you all, but I'm just going to invite you into this is what I've learned. I've been looking for answers through this lens of binary. I didn't realize how much I did this until this week. I looked for binaries. So these are some of the questions I've been asking answers for. I ask questions such as, should I stay or should I go? Can I find God in the church, or will I only find God outside the church? Does God's purpose and mission is to love humanity and not the individual, or is it to love the individual? What is real? The God of my youth, or the God that I'm learning about now? Another question I have is, can I find healing in the church, or will healing only happen outside the church? And then there are other binaries that exist in our world, labels that we put on people and institutions, right? Like there's racist and anti-racist. Ibram Kendi says you can't be in the middle. You're either racist or you're anti-racist. There's conservatives and there's progressives. There's so many binaries out here in the world that, man, I don't know. I just started seeing how much, I don't want to label it as white supremacy or anything like that, but I just realized that it's so ingrained in who I am to see this either orness. As I mentioned binaries, what comes up for you? What other binaries do you see or think about? Engage in the chat, help me out. Am I the only one that is seeing binaries in this role? Am I the only one struggling with binaries? What binaries do you see? If you could put them in the chat, help me out. Good and bad, yes. Faith versus doubt, nature and society. Good guys and bad guys. Wow. Male and female, self and others. Oof. These are good. Thank you for sharing some of those. As I look for answers through the binary lens, I've come to realize, man, this actually might not be so helpful. It keeps me thinking there's one right way and a wrong way. It keeps me from seeing other perspectives. If I'm always looking for this or that, I think I'll miss the beauty and the gift of being able to hold both. If I think there's one right way, then I miss the beauty and complexity of all things. And I know when we look at some of those binaries, especially the racist and anti-racist or black and white or progressives or conservatives or whatever, it's hard to say hold both. But if we don't venture in to see the humanity of the other side, I think we're going to miss a lot. And we start just putting up these walls of I'm right and I only know this one way. And so I guess I ask you to lean in with me as I want to learn to hold binaries so much more loosely, to hold this place of holding both. I think it's complex. I think it's hard, but I think we could learn a lot if we can hold both binaries. So here's where I've been stretched in my learning this week. If God can send Jesus out of love for all humanity, if that's his purpose, that he's saving humanity, can I also hold the tension that God can love me individually as a person? Because that's something I struggled with as I started constructing. Does God really love me? Does it really even matter? Because maybe all he cares about is loving humanity. And someone said to me this week, can it be both? I was like, can it be both? Can he love humanity and love us individually? Can I hold that? Or this idea that God is redeeming humanity through the church, but could he also be redeeming humanity through individuals or institutions outside the church? Can it be both? That God could be found in the church and that God can be found outside the church. That one's an easy one for me to hold because I think all things are spiritual. Remember that? This one, I've been stretched this week, that God can be found, that God of my youth and the God I'm learning about now, they could both be good and they don't have to be different. And then I can find healing in the church and I can find healing outside the church. Can I hold both? Is there truth in holding both? Do you all struggle with binaries, man, or is it just me? I was thinking about what it feels like to hold both. Have you guys seen the movie Steel Magnolias? It's this movie, it's a Southern movie about a family and this daughter and mom and the mom's friends and this just group of women that just, it's just a story about these group of women, but there is a death. I won't say who, but there's a death in this story. And as you're watching this movie, there's just crying scene at the funeral. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so sad. But the director or the writer or whoever made this movie, in the middle of the hardest part of the movie, put in a joke. And there was just this comic relief of just laughter. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was so brilliant to take the audience through this place of utter sorrow and throw in a joke to laugh. That there was this moment of grief and laughter. And I was like, oh my gosh, that felt so, so good. And that's kind of like holding both. And I was thinking about the youth that I've worked with. I've worked with a lot of youth in my life. And unfortunately, I've been with a few youth with the passing of their moms. And there were times when we would just sit, they'd call me up and they'd tell me, I'd run over to their house and we'd sit for hours and hours and hours and we'd cry and cry and cry. But there was somewhere in the grief, somewhere in holding that space, that stories started coming out. And they were funny stories and we were laughing and it felt so good in the midst of the grief to laugh. And then we'd cry some more and stories would come out and we'd laugh some more and we'd cry. And there was this whole part of grief where there's laughing and crying, laughing and crying. I don't know where this story came out this week, but I remember sharing it with somebody. And I don't remember when my dad died, the holding the laughter part. And maybe we didn't allow space enough to share those stories to get to that spot. But that made me think of what it could feel like to hold both binaries. It doesn't have to feel so, this is right and this is wrong, or this is good and this is bad. It could be that it could feel uncomfortable, but there could be joy in it. It could feel uncomfortable and grief, and there might be grief in it, but there could be laughter too. And so that feeling from that movie, or that feeling of when I sat with those kids as we shared and remembered their parents, is like, that's what it could feel like to hold both binaries. It's not easy by any means, but I think, I don't know, that's something I guess I want to strive for. And then as I was preparing the talk, I realized I was creating another binary again. Because when I asked the question, why am I here? Or why are you here? I was thinking people are either going to say for a reason to give from the community, give something in the community, or to receive something in the community. I'm like, oh my gosh, why do I put people in that box of they're either giving or they're taking, or giving or receiving? Or why do I put myself that I have to either give or receive? Because it could be both. And it's not that some of us are here to just give and some of us are here to just receive. It's that we're here to give and receive. This is how I see it. There are times in our spiritual journey where we have the resources and the energy and the creativity to give to the community. And then there are times when we feel like we're at the end of our ropes and we're holding on for dear life, knowing, man, we have nothing left to give and we need to receive from one another. And I feel that doing church during the pandemic has left us pretty low on the giving side, low on resources. And we're all stretched pretty thin for sure. But this week, I've had the opportunity to see the giving in action in Haven. Some of you may know Connie hasn't been doing well for the last few weeks. She's a good example of holding tension of giving and receiving, because she does a really good job of giving to the community as she leads us in a prayer group on Thursday nights, as she leads us in different spaces within here in the gathering. But she also is able to express her needs to us. When she has a need, she will reach out to us and receive from us. And she's done that this week. This week, she's made some of her needs known. And what I've seen is the community come around her and give of yourselves, whether it be your time, your expertise, your money, just phone calls, cooking, etc. You've made it happen. And this community is amazing and encourages my heart to see all this giving in action. I've actually set up a Slack channel called Care Channel, where I've been putting updates if you want to be in the loop of the situation with what's going on with Connie. I just thank you for being a giving community and caring for each other. So this Haven space can be both a place of giving and receiving, a place where you may need encouragement and a place where you can give encouragement, a place where you can serve and a place where you can be served, a place where you can receive from the divine and a place where you can give to the divine. So you all answered the question why you are here this morning. I don't know if your answer might have changed throughout this few minutes of me sharing, but I wanted to share why I'm here, because that's what I've been wrestling with. Why am I here? I'm here because I believe in the God of my youth that told me I'm loved and I'm worthy and I could be used by God. And I believe in a God on this side that is broader than the God box I grew up with. A God that keeps breaking down the walls of my youth and beckons me into the expansiveness of all that he or she or they are, and how they're finding ways to save humanity. I'm here. Why am I here? I want to find healing in the church. But I also know that I have to find resources to aid in the healing. Why am I here? I'm here because I believe we are meant to do this faith journey with others, even though our faith journey is ours alone to walk. And I believe, why am I here? I believe I have a lot to give to this community: hope, leadership, vision, encouragement, relationships. But on this other end, I believe I can receive from this community. I can receive grace. I can receive support. I could receive encouragement. I could receive co-travelers with me in this journey. So those are some of my reasons why I'm here. I asked at the beginning, why are you here today? And maybe you don't struggle with that question as much as I have. But if you're ever wondering, what do you have to give? You've given a lot. You've given a lot, especially this morning. Your presence here gives me encouragement. Your participation in the chat gives me a sense of connection to all of y'all. Your openness and vulnerability gives me a sense of trust and hope as we build relationships with one another. And you all bearing witness to my struggles and thought process around binaries, man, that's giving me grace. So you see, it doesn't take much to give of yourself. So I thank you for giving this morning. My hope is that as we continue to become Haven, that we will hold all these complexities well. Whatever the binaries we struggle with, let us not hold so tightly that we think, "Ooh, this is the right way," and that we lose sight of other people's perspectives. Yes, it's uncomfortable to hold both. It stretches me to hold both, but somehow I'm finding hope and healing in knowing that I can hold both. Um, as we take time to step into a breakout, I want you to think of some of the binaries that you hold, some of the questions that I have for our breakout time. What binaries do you see in what binaries do you see in play in your life that either helps you in your process or puts up barriers in your processing? And what do you receive from being in this Haven community? And what do you give as part of this Haven community? And I know the give part might feel weird, narcissistic. I'm looking at myself, this is what I can give. But I think it's important to name some of the things, name some of your strengths, your talents that you can give. And so I just wanted to pose those couple questions.